Friday Health Q&A. So we'll let some folks roll in, and I'll start making tea and all that type of stuff. Let me mess around with the community moderation stuff so we can cut back on, you know, some trolls, because that's always good. And then let me chat filter to all messages so I can see everybody, and we wait for everybody to roll in, and I'll start making some tea and having some tea and answering some questions and all that type of stuff. I don't think you can even see my table, so hey, oh, I'm gonna have to go get that because it rolled all the way across the room. Give me a second. Okay, need my timer. Morning, everybody, or afternoon, I should say. Somebody said they're almost going to bed. Yeah, it's noon here. I live in Oregon, so I'm in like Pacific Standard Time. So yeah, it's like 12 here is like 4 o'clock on the East Coast, right? I think we're 4 hours ahead. Yeah. So, but yeah, I guess I used to do it in the after mornings, whatever. Rolling with it. Hey, everybody. Good day. I'm gonna make some tea today. I'm gonna have. I got this new teapot. It's not overly fancy, and the glass is kind of thin, so like I wouldn't travel with it. But I needed something that had a longer like brew vessel, because my favorite tea is Taiping Hong Kwai green tea from Anohai, and I probably said that entirely wrong. I'm not going to pretend like I know how to pronounce things correctly, but I really, really love this tea from Yunnan Sourcing, and the reason that I needed something, well, I mean, I don't have to, but I was just, buying stuff I didn't need. But it's longer because look how beautiful these are. They're hand flattened, right? And so like it's kind of always a shame to break them up. So I got something. Look, it almost could be a little taller. If I had my fair share cup, I could just brew it in this and then strain it into something else. But we're gonna make do here. And it's so pretty. I kind of want to see it dance, right? And this is a bigger pot than I normally make. So we're going to answer some questions. No, I'm going to share with my husband when we're done. Usually it's a tiny pot, but it's definitely colder here now, and so we've been drinking more tea. I don't know. I definitely drink a lot of tea in the summertime too, but I don't know. Obviously, we as humans go towards warmer things in the winter. I always thought that was kind of funny how humans, especially in the first world, like in the summertime, we want to make, most people, not everybody, I know everybody's different, but like we want to make our house as like cold as possible, right? We want it like super duper cold, and then in the wintertime, we want it like pretty damn warm, like warmer than we would normally have it, and it's always been such a funny like juxtaposition to me. Right? Not that I don't keep my house warm. But I aim for like 72 degrees in the summertime and in the winter. Sometimes it gets hotter in the winter just because the wood stove doesn't really care. You can't like super adjust it. But yeah. So I'm going to make some tea. Now this is a green tea. So I'm going to go like 170 here. Maybe 175. No, 170, April. Don't mess around. I'm going to go 170. So with green teas, it's a good idea to brew in the like 160, 170 range so you don't get as many like tannins. But with like a white tea, which is same plant, just different way it's been processed, you can go into like the 180 to 190 range to get like more of the floral notes. And so it's just kind of, I don't know, something I play around with. But she's gonna dance for us. Although I'm low-key, it'd be crazy because this was not an expensive teapot. I do not know if this glass is tempered. I mean, it's supposed to be for tea, but that would be crazy. It's not, cold out of the fridge, but we'll find out. That's all we can do is we'll find out when we pour the hot water in there. But it's not boiling water, so we should be good. Hey, everybody, rolling in. Remember, this is my Friday Q&A, but I have tea first. I sip tea first, get the pot done, and then we can go from there. It just gives us a chance to settle in. I can just kind of be a human, and then I can turn my brain on and become the April that everyone's here for. No, I know a lot of you definitely like to just hear me jabber too, and I appreciate that. It makes me feel less used, if that makes sense. You know, you're like, shut up, woman, answer my questions. But I've just been like head deep into like holiday sale stuff because I run a small business, and so if those of you have seen, I have been shamelessly posting here and on Instagram and on Facebook about like every day. I'm having like a 12 days of Christmas sale that started November 1st and goes until the 12th of November. I don't know. I feel like it's less stressful. Like for me, like when I do like holiday shopping, I feel like it's less stressful if I get it done like early in the season. But also from like a business perspective, like I like having the time to get people's like orders out to them well before Christmas, right? And if anything goes wrong with the postal service, it gives us time to fix it before there's like a 1 day deadline, right? Not that I won't have Black Friday and Small Business Saturday and Cyber Monday sales too, but I just wanted to give people the opportunity to save in the beginning of the month, right? Before chaos breaks loose. Um, okay. Fingers crossed, knock on wood, that this glass holds. I think it'll be fine. It had decent reviews. I don't know if I'd trust it for like rolling boiling water, right? But I think we're doing just fine. Well, it's fine. It's gonna be fine. What might have happened, because this is such a big teapot, is hopefully I put enough water in here. I did. Just enough water. Ooh, that was the last of the water. Just jumped out like that. But now we'll be able to watch it dance and like come to life and look alive. And I'm gonna have some tea today. My plan is to clean up the house after this live so I could use the extra boost. But sometimes actually I find tea very calming because the L-theanine in green or white, or even some black to an extent depending on how it's processed, the L-theanine that's present in Camellia sinensis, which is what real tea is, right? Actually helps buffer the caffeine so it doesn't slam you all at once. It slows it down. So I can't drink coffee. I just can't. It will give me panic attacks. I will shit myself to death. I can't. Even if I've eaten well, even if I had gelatin, even if it doesn't matter, my body says no coffee. But I can handle tea because the L-theanine makes it go slower into my body, but also L-theanine is really good at lowering like histamines and like buildups in your brain that cause like stress. And so I really, really like tea for that. So some tea has high energy and I'll feel the caffeine from it, but other times I get tea drunk and I'm like passed out. Not like I'm actually drunk, but the L-theanine like really calms you down. And so I am just all for it, Hey, everybody rolling in. Yeah, remember, as soon as this timer's up and I have my first little sip of tea, I'll start answering questions. Get out of here, fly. The flies are so bad this year. And it's the strongholds because it's been cold enough outside that it killed all the outside ones. So now we have like the toughest flies in the house. And, we live on a farm, and even though we do fly management, the farms around us don't. And I don't know if you know this, but flies can travel a really long way. So, like, even though we're doing all the things to keep flies down here, it doesn't matter if, like, somebody down the way isn't. Right? And so it's been a bad year for flies, but we're just, like, slowly murdering the ones that are left in the house because then there are no more for the year, right? It doesn't matter. It does not matter if we have our windows shut, our screens up, we're not, they just get in. But I am pretty happy with being able to see her unfold. Isn't that beautiful? I think it is. I felt bad about buying this teapot because like I don't really need another teapot. I've been trying to like cut down on my like I can't really afford that useless crap, but for some reason I bought it, because, times are rough and it's just a habit to break. But I am glad that I got this actually, because I do think it will serve a purpose. And I don't know, I guess I don't buy at least, I don't know, some stuff I buy is useless, but not usually. It has some sort of purpose in my mind, and as long as I'm using it, That's the important thing, right? Just telling myself that. Let me change this because I think I missed. Oh, yeah. Whoops. Let me go to here and then back to. It does that sometimes. Back to all messages. There we go. Sometimes I notice it like messes up and then it just freezes, but what it really does is it switches back to like top comments, right? And then I don't see everybody's comment. Ooh, she smells so nice. Did you know that like when you smell like a really nice like green tea, white tea, black tea, that the umami, like the L-theanine and the flavors and the terpenes and stuff in the tea can actually like they trigger your mouth to water. Like right now my mouth is like it smells like it feels like I just smelled something like really juicy, like you know, like a lemon or something to make your mouth water. Um, and when that happens, I'm always like, yes, it's about to happen. It's about to be a fantastic cup of tea. And I'm excited about it, you know? Although sometimes I have had that reaction and then I taste it and I'm like, ooh, this isn't the tea for me. But remember, if you buy tea and you don't like it the first time you make it, it could be because you needed to let your tea rest and acclimate to your house. It could also be because you need to mess around with the quantity and the steep time and the water time. Like you can really like find a different taste profile from the same tea by like just changing up so many things. The only thing that I'm seeing about this is I get a little bit of like sediment in there, and that's okay. I don't mind eating tea leaves, and so I'm gonna set that there. It's so much bigger than my other one, so hopefully I don't get excited and knock it off. Okay, tasty. I like it because I don't know how it tastes like the ocean, but it does. It's like the morning mist when you wake up and go out there, but like you're somehow still really warm, and it tastes like salty earth without being salty at all. I don't know. You're supposed to like be able to like really poetically describe how tea tastes, and I give it a try. So for those of you who have been here before, I see you already asking me a question, but if you have a question, say question through your question and I'll jump into it. So first one I see is question, if you had to choose between essential oils and synthetic fragrances in a product you couldn't do without, which would you pick? That's like chicken picking a potato and a potato. They're one and the same. The funny thing that people don't know about synthetic fragrances is typically that just means like, okay, so an essential oil can typically have anywhere between 100 to 200 different chemical compounds within it. That's just the reality. They're not just an essential oil. They are a varying degree of VOCs. But what happens is when they go and they separate out just one compound, then it becomes a synthetic fragrance. But it's the same thing, right? So honestly, this will sound crazy, and I'm not a fan of either, obviously, and I avoid them like the plague. And whatever it is, you might be able to find something like it that's unscented, so don't stop digging, right? But this will sound crazy. I'd almost go with the fragrance oil because at least it's just one chemical. Right? At least it's just the one chemical versus like 100 plus that can, by the way, morph when you have exposure to ozone or other chemicals like chlorine in your shower or other chemicals that you put on. Chemicals aren't fixed. They're constantly changing, and what's in the bottle in the beginning can be completely different within a week of it being made or when you put it on and mix it with something else. Question, herbs for tooth abscesses. Of course, don't mess around. Get yourself some antibiotics if you can and get to a dentist, because abscesses, people don't think about it, but they can go deadly fast. But topically, I really like a good yarrow tea poultice tincture, especially, you know, if it's not like, it's just hard though, because by the time it ruptures, you really need to get somewhere, right? But if it hasn't ruptured, you could start using yarrow, like tincture on it topically. Anything that you can get going like that. I would not recommend essential oil of yarrow because again it's not yarrow, and it can eat a hole in the abscess and break it open, and that's really dangerous. Internally, you could try using something like echinacea tincture like pretty consistently throughout the day to see if that increase in white blood cells is enough to help with the abscess, right? But people don't realize how deadly like cavities and things like that can be. Question, What would your go-to herbal smoke blend for every day to help quit cigarettes? Mullein in general. It's not really the season for it, but if you can like harvest and cure your own, it will smoke a million times better. But mullein is also really nice mixed with like a little bit of rose petal. Go really light on the rose petal because it's easy to end up tasting like you're smoking your grandma's bathroom. um, but mullein is definitely my go-to. And if you're quitting smoking, consider eating a shit ton of sunflower seeds. Just buy the ones that are pre-shelled. Like a week or a month beforehand, because while they used to believe that sunflower seeds had nicotine in them, they don't, but they have a chemical in them that hits the same receptor in your brain. So if you're like eating a bunch of those first and then you slowly start weaning off of cigarettes with the herbal smoke and just generally trying to cut back, you'll have less cravings when you're eating the sunflower seeds, because not because it keeps your hands busy, but because, and you have to eat a fair amount of the actual seeds, right? It hits the same receptors in your brain, so you go through less of a like a nicotine withdrawal. Question: like you say, it's not good to brew loose leaf more than a few minutes, but herbal infusions we do for hours. Can you speak more about this? So, um, the thing that seems to be missing there is that it's not good to brew volatile, scented, very highly fragrant herbs for more than like 10 minutes, right? But nourishing herbal infusions should never be made with fragrant herbs. So, nettle, all of her properties come from like basically, for the most part, like nutrients. Right, and it takes a long time to draw those out. And when you start with hot water and it goes into cold for like 24 or 12 hours, what happens is that the water kind of acts like a poultice and draws that stuff out, breaks down the cellular structure so the nutrients and such can get into there. Not to say that there aren't other compounds, but when a plant, like let's take lavender or chamomile for example, when they have a strong smell like that, that means they have really high VOC levels, which is volatile organic compounds. Now, these aren't inherently dangerous, but when they're over extracted they are, right? And it's really easy to over extract them and they go bitter. So anything that smells really strong, you don't want to really brew it for longer with warm water for longer than like 10 minutes, right? But anything that doesn't smell strong at all, you could do a nourishing herbal infusion out of for the most part. And then the in between reality is you could do a cold brew of really strong VOC plants, right? Like you can, I have a video like the cold brew tea from my chamomile lavender, which is perfect because I just used those as an example. You can use cold water on those and keep it in the fridge overnight, and you won't over extract the like the higher, easier extractable VOCs to a dangerous level, but you will also be able to have the benefit of extracting more of the harder to get, takes longer, and even mineral compounds that are found in these plants that we don't typically have access to because it would be too strong to brew it for hot for long like that. Nettle smells. Yeah, it depends on your batch and how you make it, right? Like, I know people don't like the taste of nettle when it's dried, and it's completely different than fresh. Fresh tastes amazing, but the higher quality nettle you have when you're making a nettle infusion, it doesn't. It just has an umami taste and a little bit of a smell. But I've come across some cheaper nettle, like really old nettle, that like when you make it, it like stinks, and then I just toss it because I know that it's gone rancid, right? Because even though it's not rancid like an oil, like herbs can go bad, right? Okay, question. What herbs would you recommend to shrink thyroid nodules? I know gut health is linked to thyroid right now and using poke root and castor oil. Um, have you looked into the iodine protocol? Right, and working on detoxing bromide out of your body. It's not, I wouldn't just jump into taking shit tons of iodine, right? But most of the time when we get nodules like that, they're like low key a goiter, right? And like we eat processed food, even if you're buying organic, you're likely eating something that's had bromide added to it. Bromide has been banned everywhere else in first world countries, like all over Europe. You can't put bromide in food, sodas, bread. But in the United States, they like to add bromide to basically all drinks because it stabilizes the flavor, and they use it as a dough conditioner, even in gluten free stuff, anything. It has bromide in it. But bromide competes for iodine in your thyroid. So all these people that are suffering from like nodules and like thyroid issues and stuff because like they have no space for the iodine to move in. Right, and then we chronically undereat iodine, especially as crazy as it sounds. Like, I'm glad we're all eating like higher quality salt, but they're not adding iodine to that salt. And if you're not eating like large amounts of seafood, all of your other food is going to be depleted of iodine because our soil is depleted, right? And so, like, we got away from processed stuff to an extent, but then, like, we're suffering from lack of nutrition of iodine. And you have to remember that every, like, organ in your body requires iodine to function, not just your thyroid. So, you can just Google iodine protocol, and you can even look that up on Facebook. There's entire groups for it. Don't just jump into it. There's a lot of stuff that you have to do beforehand to prepare your body, but it's something that I would look into. Right, and of course, topically, you could do like castor oil packs. If you didn't want to use synthetic iodine, you could work with something like seaweed infusions and things like that. Question: any herbal product recommendations for acne? I've been struggling with it for at least a year. Yeah, that's no problem. So check out my video on like my yarrow infused spritz. It's yarrow will make your acne go away. Now, if it's hormonal or cystic, I'm not saying that you'll never get acne again, but the problem with acne is like having the wound and having it not healing and having it big enough that it creates, like an indent, right? So you might get acne still, but using yarrow on it topically, real yarrow, will be fantastic. And my teenage daughter is in here moderating. She can tell you all about like how amazing yarrow is, like even on teenage acne, right? And so I like to take dried yarrow or fresh if you have access to it, and infuse that with witch hazel and a little bit of glycerin. But you can also just use yarrow tincture and apply it topically. You can make it a yarrow infused oil, but look into like the type of oil you're using, because if you're just rubbing like PUFA rancid seed oils on your skin, it's not going to help. And yeah, you can use yarrow on your butt for the person who asks. You can use it anywhere. You can use it internally as well, although internally it doesn't really do much for acne, right? But yeah, okay, so let's see. Maybe I need more consistent. I did make yarrow witch hazel. Yeah, you have to be consistent with it, but also look at your diet. Like, what is your liver happy? Like, are you eating like a lot of like rancid seed oils in your food? Right? Are you getting enough healthy animal fats? Are you using essential oils on your face? Are you getting blasted in the face with chlorine? Are you washing your face too much? Right? So people always kind of like look at like what they can put on their skin to help it, but also don't forget to look at what you can like remove from your skin to help it, right? Okay, let's see. Let's see. Topically, but internally, let's say check liver enzyme as well. Also link red clover tea, milk thistle, zinc. Yeah, be careful with zinc. People hurt themselves with zinc all the time. You need zinc, but you should probably just eat some red meat to get zinc. Like when people start supplementing zinc, they tank their copper levels. And when your copper levels tank, then you can't use iodine or you can't use iron very well. And then they tell you that you're anemic. And by the way, when your copper levels are low, you have a hard time like utilizing ascorbic acid. And like, I'm not saying we don't need zinc, but like nature doesn't make zinc exist by itself. Like, it's really important to have all the cofactors with it, but I see people hurt themselves with zinc all the time. Question: what would you suggest for plantar fasciitis? So, it's gonna take a while, but start looking into zero drop shoes. I know if you've heard of them before, that seems scary, and you've been told that you need like constant arch support and special shoes. But the problem is your foot is really weak. You have actually atrophied your foot muscles, right? And so you can't walk without pain because this muscle is just like, support me in every way. And so when you slowly start rebuilding your feet and correcting your feet from the horrendous damage that modern day shoes do, you'll get rid of that pain and your muscles will get stronger. Now, it's not going to be instant, and you can't just switch like that. You have to go slow. There are tons of videos about it on YouTube. But so for context, from the age 13 until like my very late teens, early 20s, I was homeless, wearing shitty shoes, but I walked constantly. And I'm talking like I've probably walked 1,000 miles in my life or more on top of average day walking, right? Just like along highways and stuff. And it was to the point about 2 years ago that standing barefoot for more than like a minute was excruciating. It felt like I was standing on like pure bone. It was horrendous, right? And I always just thought, oh, well, I wore my feet out, right? And so that's just the reality that I'm going to have to live with now. But that wasn't true. I slowly switched over to zero drop shoes and wide toe box, like natural shoes to where your feet can actually heal. And I started doing like foot exercises and toe spacing things that I would wear. And in about 6 months, I was completely pain free. I don't have pain when I walk around barefoot anymore at all. I do if I wear normal shoes because that shit mingles your feet. But all of my shoes are now zero drop. Like that means my feet are just completely flat on the ground. And this works for people who are flat footed or have tall arches. No human in existence ever needed like arches as they you like needed like support. They didn't like strap like you know Dr. Scholl's to their feet as they like hunted animals in the woods. Right, and so it takes a while, but it is helpful. Um, Hello, I've never seen your channel. Well, lost it a couple of times, but just to make sure the question I ask is relevant to your channel. What is the channel about? Oh, I'm an herbalist, and so I'm doing my live Q&A where I'm answering like health and herbal questions. But feel free to throw a question at me. I may or may not be able to answer it. I'll promise I'll dump out whatever's in my brain if I see it. And I'm like, yeah, I can handle that. Question: white tissue inside my mouth gave me dental. I believe it's a steroid. I started yarrow tincture. It has significantly improved, and I've been doing 4 drops. Is that a good dose? Well, every dose is different. Remember that like these aren't pharmaceuticals, and so like you really have to like pay attention to like what your body is saying and what your body is doing. 4 drops might be perfect for you. It could be not enough for somebody else or too much for somebody else. But you could also make like a yarrow tea to swish with, right? You could even make like a saltwater yarrow tea, to like you would do that for sore throats too. But like it's also great for like abscesses and gum health and things like that. Um, Question: what do you forage for in the fall? That's a good question. Everybody's bioregion is different, just like everybody's body is different. But for here, we're all about like Oregon grapefruit, lots of roots, right? We want to be digging roots in the fall, especially if you have frost in your area. Wait till your first frost because that completely signals to the plant that it's time to store all of these sugars and starches and nutrients in your root. Think of it like a root cellar for the plant, right? So when you dig them in the spring, they're usually pretty empty and dead, especially if it's a plant that continues to live throughout like its life versus just dying for one season, right? But so we dig a lot of roots, a lot of goldenrod. We come upon like a fair amount of like mushrooms. I also will get usnea, although I can get usnea well into the winter. I'm usually getting like hawthorn berries after the frost hits, rose hips, right? Blackberry leaf sometimes, but our blackberries are freaks because they keep their leaves all winter long. But I like to get the really young ones in the fall because I don't know, I feel like they're more potent than they are during the summer because the plant's not focusing on berries. Um, my mom has lymphedema, psoriasis, and she's a very herbal person, but she always looks it on Google. Well, that's fine, and I told her to not always trust what's on it. Yeah, I use Google all the time. I have a lot of herbal books, but for me and my brain, like they don't evolve. And I'm like, I already know that. I want to know more or different or things outgrow, right? Well, if she's got eczema, psoriasis, eczema, geez, brain. She probably has an unhappy liver. I would get her to look at her diet, see how many rancid seed oils and ultra processed stuff might be in there, even if she thinks she's eating clean, right? And of course, like once you start like correcting, like not eating all that nasty stuff, you could start working with something like burdock or something simple like roasted dandelion root tea in the morning to help support your liver function, right? What was the other one? I totally forgot what she said. It was, oh, lymphedema. She could start working with something like cleavers, like an infusion or a tea to support the lymphatic flow, dry brushing, rebounding, moving more, walking at least an hour a day. All these things can really help like get your system up and flowing. Some people don't have enough like electrolytes in their body, and so what's really weird is like it can go either way. You can waste a lot of like water if you don't have a lot of electrolytes. Like if you pee all the time for no reason, definitely check your electrolyte levels, including sodium, magnesium, potassium, because sometimes that can make you like have an inability to like maintain water. But for some people, it also means that they have water retention, right? It really just depends on the way your body like goes with it. And so that's something to look into. Like electrolytes could be like the simple fix for her on top of, moving your body around. Question: is there a reputable lab request for my own labs? I need to drive deep into getting my health under control. Doctor put me on Ozempic. I can't believe what I've been going through to get my A1C down. Yeah, there are some expensive labs out there. It depends. Like, I would make a list of the labs that you would like to start looking at. If you want to order your own labs, just check out Walk-in Labs. Right, Walk-in Labs. They work with like Quest and LabCorp often, and those are like all over the US. You can order your own labs and you just go to that lab and they just give you the report when it's done. Now, as far as you're able to read it, make sure that you're reaching out and like researching about how to look into it. But you could also always like reach out to a functional medicine doctor. I like functional medicine doctors because they love labs and they love abnormal labs in the way that like they'll order labs that a standard doctor won't, right? You could also do like any amount of HTMA hair testing is always helpful, but usually what's happening with somebody who is like suffering from like being overweight or because I know people don't just use Ozempic for that, but like if you can't get your like glucose to go into your cells, I would dive deep into like your diet about the seed oils. I swear to God. So there's this thing called the Randall cycle. And in a very, very small nutshell, it's this thing that happens in your body where your body like shunts the glucose from your blood into your cells. But these damn seed oils, they get into your body and they like grease you up, basically. They cause all kinds of oxidation and damage and things like that, and deplete you of vitamin E and all these other things. But they actually like block the Randall cycle where like your body can't shunt the glucose into your cells where it needs. But then your brain gets desperate because it always needs like dextrose, like glucose at any given moment, or it will die. Like you can't go like less than a minute, or you just go like all touched, right? Like you'll have brain damage. And so it just raises these levels up, and so your brain just keeps stealing it and keeps using it and keeps your levels high. So I would look into like the direct work, not the like side work and a million YouTube videos from other people. But I would look into the direct work of like Dr. Raymond Peat. He passed away last year, but his work is pretty like outstanding in regards to showing like the implications of like the rancid seed oils on our health, and like how it crashes your metabolism and causes diabetes and thyroid issues and exhaustion and weight gain, and we're being poisoned. That's just straight up. There's no other way to say it. We're being poisoned. We're being poisoned by our food. And in the beginning, they created these seed oils to feed livestock, but the livestock started dying. But they had already made like metric tons of this, and they're like, what can we do? Humans don't seem to die from it right away. So it got sold to the industry, right? It was never meant to be human food, but now it is. Question: have you heard of the brand Just Ingredients? It's supposed to clean and great. Wanted to get your take on it. I haven't really looked into it, but what really bugs me is people are like, these are just ingredients. This is just clean. There's no chemicals, just essential oils. So if they have like an unscented version, by all means, give it a try. Read about their ingredients. But like usually when I see stuff like that, they almost are always like, it's chemical free, and then they don't like tell you that they're like, oh, it's essential oils, and every one of these essential oils has like 200 plus chemicals naturally occurring in it, right? And they're really hyper concentrated. So juicing, what do I think about juicing was the next part of your question. I really love fruit juice. There's no real evidence that fruit juice is bad for the human body. Now, if it's from like hyper concentrate and there's corn syrup, that's not really juice, is it? But I wouldn't like live off of it, but I like it for good, easy, quick, accessible carbohydrate energy, right? But I really like high quality orange juice. I like a good apple juice, anything that's real. If you can make it yourself, it's even better because it's not been pasteurized. And now I understand they need to pasteurize stuff to make it shelf stable and safe to ship out, but it kills a lot of and denatures a lot of the vitamins and minerals that are in it. Like everyone's like, orange juice for vitamin C. Before they pasteurized it, maybe. But there's not much vitamin C left in orange juice. And in fact, the places that really like pump up the concept of like, oh, this is your daily dose of vitamin C on a label, they've actually had to typically add ascorbic acid, but because there's naturally occurring vitamin C, they don't have to tell you that they've added ascorbic acid. Also, a lot of orange juice uses flavor packs, which is like fake, and they don't have to tell you that either. So be really wary about that type of stuff if you're concerned about it, but making your own is a fantastic option. Question, can I add beef tallow to homemade salve and beeswax? Yep. You can check out my, it's like, what, 2.5 hours, I think? I have a 2.5 hour free live recorded class about making like balms and salves. I talk about adding tallow and all other kinds of stuff like that. But yeah, you can. Question, herbs for edema. So that's the same thing as like lymphedema in the way that like you just have to get your lymphatic system going again. Right, you need to move your body, you need to do dry brushing, rebound, look into like cleavers or calendula infusions or tinctures or capsules. Right, you have to do something. You have to do something to get your system up and flowing again. But rebounding is just like when you're literally just jumping on a trampoline. It's fantastic. My next tree is going to be an orange tree. I'm lucky to be in California in that way. That is so cool. Yeah, no, when I like fantasize about like moving to different countries, I'm like, there are orange trees all over in Spain. Or like, oh my God, there's just orange trees on the street in Italy. Like, I'm like, what was funny is at the time, I didn't know that I like had genetic scurvy. Basically, my body has an inability to absorb ascorbic acid, vitamin C through my sodium pathways in my gut. And so like I didn't know that I was like dying, right? But like I was like everywhere I wanted to move or like dreamed about moving to, there was oranges. Everything was like, there's oranges, right? And unfortunately, even when I eat oranges, it doesn't matter because my body can't absorb the ascorbic acid, so I have to do other stuff. But I just think it's funny because I think my body was trying to tell me. Like, it was like, it doesn't know that I can't absorb it, but it was like, eat an orange, right? Question, dry mouth when well hydrated usually starts in the morning. What are you brushing your teeth with? I would really, really investigate what you're using to brush your teeth if you're using a chemical product. Right, if you're using like a standard toothpaste that like most people use, I would really look into that, right? But it can also be from like a bacterial imbalance, and so maybe try, I don't know, milk kefir or water kefir that you make yourself. The stuff at the store is fake. It might take a while, but xylitol, a xylitol-based toothpaste, shamelessly, I do have my mouth mud tooth powder that's got xylitol in it. Is really fantastic for starving the bad bacteria in your mouth without killing the good bacteria, because what it does is it's not, they think it's something that they can eat but they can't, and they starve to death. Right, but it's also really good for getting saliva going, and of course it could be your gut health as well. But the milk kefir and the water kefir can help address that too. Sometimes if we have like really poor gut health, or even just like silent acid reflux and we don't realize it, it can make our mouth really dry. So most herbs and products come from third-party manufacturers, which continue to add more chemicals into the product to preserve the only organic. The only organic is the items you grow yourself. That's not true at all. People always, I mean, like, I'm not saying that there aren't like shitty herbal supplements out there, but it's really wild. It's really wild. Like, as a person who works with like FDA registered facilities, the amount of misinformation that people have no concept about is like wild. Right? Like also, like you want them to be doing lab testing, and like third party manufacturing is like somebody buying white label. Like, so if somebody's buying products that are already made and putting their label on it, yeah, I wouldn't trust the quality of that. But like as a person who like makes thousands of bottles of like herbal supplements and goes through all the lab testing, I can't even accept, and I won't even accept herbs that have been like irradiated or treated with all this stuff, And the concept of organic is really interesting though, because the funny thing is when you buy organic, like, so like we don't do organic certification because it's like massively expensive for every batch that we do, but also it's misleading because even when you buy organic, that organic is allowed to have pesticides, chemicals, right? It's just different types. However, One thing that isn't happening in the herbal industry is they're not like spraying chemicals on it while they're making it. What happens is when it gets imported, it can be irradiated or sprayed chemical on, because the USDA, if it's not coming from within the United States, requires the herbs and produce and things to be treated so there's no pests or anything coming through, or diseases, right? But you can get away with that, like away from that. Like if we have to import anything, because not all herbs can grow in America, or not all things are from America, we use steam. Steam or deep cold, right? There are other options, but of course places add fillers and things like that. But it's a huge misconception, and I'm really proud of what we do, because, and I'm not like feeling personally attacked or anything. I just see people have this misconception all the time, and I'd be more concerned about the herb not being what they say it is than I would them like nefariously adding chemicals. Question: how would you know if a tincture is bad? Like if a tincture went bad, it would have to lose all of its alcohol. And so depending on the level of alcohol that it started with and it evaporated off, like it wouldn't smell or taste like alcohol anymore. Smell it before you taste it. But if there's no smell of alcohol there and it's noticeably evaporated off, like, okay, so here's a turmeric tincture. I just made this the other day for a video. But let's say I made this and I forgot about it for like 5 years. As long as this hasn't evaporated away, as long as the liquid volume hasn't changed, we're good to go. So alcohol doesn't itself go bad, but what can happen is because alcohol can evaporate off before water does, because it has a lower evaporation point, then your tincture becomes no longer shelf stable. But that only really happens if you store your tinctures in the dropper bottles forever, because it's just able to evaporate out through the cap and stuff like that. So if it doesn't smell like alcohol and you see like real evidence of it evaporating, then it's bad. Question: gum flap on gums near wisdom tooth. That is a question for a dentist. Usually they'll remove it, but there's nothing that you could do like herbally to make that go away, really. Question: any suggestions how to make a mouthwash? I like to make like an infused vinegar, right? You could infuse it with like real cloves, just a little bit. You don't need a whole lot of cloves in there. Real yarrow, and then you could even add some like sea salt to that. People have used vinegar for a mouthwash for a long time, but then you can also like water it down if you find it too strong, right? Like what I would do when I used to have like the water pick, toothbrush thing, and then I would put like like half a tablespoon or a tablespoon into that, and then use it after I brushed, right? But you can do it that way. Vinegar makes a pretty good one, and again, you can water it down. Double extraction, how do I do it? Well, it's just like a decoction. Basically, if you make a tincture, grab another one. This is a Pearly Everlasting tincture. I wouldn't need to do a double extraction on this one, but so I would take out the plant matter, and I would put that plant matter in a pot, and I would put the same amount of water that is basically in the jar into that pot. And then I would boil it down, simmer it down by half. I would add water back up to what I boiled off, and then I would simmer it down again. Right, you're like making it strong, and then you strain it out. But here's the tricky part: because you're going to be adding that water back to it, you need to do a little bit of math. So this is 100 proof vodka, which means it's 50% water and 50% alcohol naturally. And for a tincture to be shelf stable, it needs to be 25% alcohol by volume. So if you add too much to this, because it's only so much, you'll knock the ABV down. So for every cup of vodka, I would not add more than 1/4 cup of that of the double extraction to it, of that water back to it, right? I usually only do like 2 tablespoons per 1 cup, because I like to give myself grace for evaporation. So if you make this only 25% by volume by adding that 1/4 cup to every cup, what happens is it's shelf stable at the moment, but if you put it into like a bottle or something, you've got less than 1% of evaporation room before you can no longer consider it shelf stable. Right. So it's usually like 2 tablespoons per 1 cup, right? But that's how you do it. And usually that's only needed for like mushroom type stuff. Question: I wanted to tint my lip balm, but when I used beetroot powder, it did not emulsify or blend into it. Yeah, so you're gonna want to make the oil into an infused oil with the beetroot powder or just dried beets, and you don't want to let that infuse for like 6 weeks in like a warm dark place, then you'll get the color, but then you strain out the powder. Don't leave the powder in it. That's the best way to do it. People leave powder in all the time, but you know it's grainy and it doesn't stick to you very well in that way. So infusion is the best way to go. Let's see. I don't know that one. So question, any help for palatial mycolonus? Involuntary muscle movements and twitching and soft palate, mouth and ear pain help. You know, with stuff like that, whenever you have like muscle twitching and muscle issues, like I instantly am like, have you checked your magnesium levels? Have you checked your B12 levels? Like, I'm not saying that it's always that, but oftentimes when our nerves start misfiring like that, because that's what it is, it's a nerve issue, there's something happening to the nerve sheath, like it's degrading in some way. Like if you have back spasms all the time, if you're always like kind of like twitching, if you're, if you're finding that you're having tremors, anything like that is always related to like your nerves aren't getting something they need. And while it might not be magnesium or B12, those are real suspect and things that doctors overlook all the time. They have no idea. Doctors are so ignorant, especially in the US, about B12 in particular, that they won't even test for it. They're like, oh, it's fine. I'm like, you will literally die. It's not fine. You will literally die without enough B12, and people end up with crazy ass symptoms all the time. There's a book called Could It Be B12 that's worth reading for anybody who has any sort of muscular, neurological, any type of weird health shit going on. It is worth looking into B12, especially if you've ever like been under a lot of stress or drink a lot of coffee or had stomach issues or have poor digestion or took metformin or lived in a house with mold or exposed to a lot of chemicals. Like all this stuff rapidly depletes B12, and because B12 is water soluble, your body doesn't really build it up. So meaning, not only are you supposed to be eating enough meat every day to intake your B12, you also would have to be eating enough that you are building your levels up without depleting them. But if your body's already depleted, no matter the amount of B12 you might be getting from your diet, it uses it up faster than you can take it, right? So that's definitely something to look into. All right. I've been talking for 46 minutes. That's about 30 minutes. I know it took me about 10 minutes for tea. So I think I'm going to jump off. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today. I've got a whole row of new videos coming up. And speaking of new videos, if you would like to support my capacity to dump my brain out, keep a roof over my head, and tea in my pot, still trying not to spill that thing, consider becoming a member. It's just a way to throw me a couple of bucks a month for the work I do, and you do get early access to those new videos I talked about, right? But if you can't afford it, I don't even want you to worry about it, because I release a new video every weekend, so it's not a paywall, it's just a little bitty baby time wall. You can also check out things in my apothecary. I've got like all of my books, synergism capsules, mouth mud, pit goop. I've got something for everybody. You can use the one-time code TEATIME, TEATIME, to save 10% off of anything you like. I'm also like running a bunch of sales at the time of posting anyhow, so keep an eye on the shop for different sales and things popping up to save a bunch of money if you want to stock up. If you can't do that, or even if you can, make sure that you like, comment, subscribe, turn on notifications, and share. Sharing is super important because it helps other people learn that they're smart enough to do this. It helps them get curious, take their health back into their own hand. It gets my work out there. It is super important. So thank you so much for watching, folks, and I'll see you next time. Bye.